Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Writing Escapades with me, David Rawding. On this first episode of Writing Escapades, I'm going to be talking about what inspired me to start a podcast and a YouTube channel. And I'm going to be discussing rough drafts. So let's dive right in. I'm going to be approaching this podcast as a rough draft. I'm pretty sure I have a face for podcasting, but if you really want to see my ugly mug, here I am right on YouTube. But if you want to follow the podcast and see any of my social media, the links are in the description. So let me start out by telling you a little bit about myself. If you ask any of my friends, they'll probably say that I'm just like an avid fisherman or a traveler or an outdoorsy guy, but that's not really how I've ever seen myself. I think of myself as a writer. It's a passion and has been a passion of mine since I was a kid. I'm also an avid reader, as I think most writers probably are. I'm the author of 2 novels with a small press. My first book, Taking on Water, is a psychological thriller set in New Hampshire. That's my home state. And my second book, Redemption Grove, is a wilderness suspense set in Alaska, a state where I lived and worked as a fly fishing guide for several years. Besides the books, I also have a pile of short stories published in literary journals and magazines, and most of those have all ceased to be. That's just how it kind of goes with literary journals and magazines nowadays, unfortunately. I have a bachelor's in English and an MFA in fiction, and I was an online adjunct professor, off and on for something like 5 years. Okay, that's enough about me. Here's the main point of the tale, really. As an English professor, I always relished talking about writing. I really enjoy teaching and discussing craft with students. So, as of now, I see Writing Escapades as a platform for me to do several things: offer writing advice, interview fellow authors and industry professionals, give updates on my own writing journey, tell stories, and try some writing experiments. I also want to offer you guys encouragement. Hopefully, you can learn from my mistakes and save yourself some time. Writing novels takes a lot of time, so anything you can do to speed the process along will help you write more books. And it could be that you aren't even a writer. It could be that you are just a reader, or you're just interested in the author life. Or maybe you just want to hear some original work narrated by yours truly. Well, I will surely oblige. I'm going to try to make this interactive, and I might even try some live stuff with Twitch or Instagram. So, back to the idea of rough drafts. I am sure I will look back on this first episode much later down the line, and I will cringe. But hey, what can I say? I'm new, and I'm slightly naive to this podcast and YouTube arena, so give me a break. Every protagonist has an arc, so this will be the start of mine. I'm going to talk about rough drafts broadly, as it's kind of a big subject, but here's my approach with writing a rough draft of a novel. Most of my book ideas that come out of my head start with a scene or a character or an idea for a conflict. From there, I start writing. I attempt to hook the reader early with a compelling scene, establish the points of view, drop an inciting incident, develop the protagonist and the antagonist, establish a central conflict, slip in some subplots, and then find a resolution. Bam, you've got a book. It's a bit more than that, but I'm not going to bog you guys down with an info dump on my first episode. I have too much respect for you. When it comes to writers, there are 2 main camps that you may or may not have heard of. So back in my day, you were either a vomit drafter or a diamond polisher. But nowadays, they call them pantsers or plotters. If you're a vomit drafter or pantser, like me, you take your basic idea for a story and you just start writing. You vomit the words out, and you may write in large chunks, pun intended. I use puns a lot, and I usually intend most of them, unless I don't. So just remember that, okay? So the idea of a pantser is that you are writing by the seat of your pants, pretty fast and pretty loose. No stopping to smell the roses. Just get those words on the page. Now, I'll do rough outlines. And when I'm in a chapter, I have some plot points that I want to hit. But for the most part, I'm letting the story unfold and watching my characters as I just hurl curveballs at them. The characters develop as they make choices, and that basically determine the book's fate, the story's fate. I feel like when I'm in this mode, it's exciting to write because I don't have an exact idea about how the story is going to go. That for me is the magic of writing. That's the unteachable stuff. Diamond polishers or plotters go into writing a draft with a plan. They outline like an architect and they design the arc of the story, the plot, the subplots. They do character sketches, world building. When a diamond polisher writes a paragraph, they will work on that paragraph for a while to make sure every word works and the punctuation is right and the dialogue is crisp. Which is the right method? Which method is best? I think you should do whatever feels more productive for you. You may also do a little bit of both. I believe the blend for that is plantser. Again, totally fine. A lot of times I'll drop an outline only to ditch it once I start writing. I certainly don't ever feel bound to an outline, but having some direction does help me. Still, I like to be open to organic changes that evolve as I write. I want the story to feel as natural as possible. A reader can suss out if something is too contrived. Readers, especially these modern readers, are very smart and very savvy. So, some things to think about, especially if it's your first draft of your first novel. The key is to finish this thing. You need to land this plane. It's not going to be a perfect landing. You'll encounter some turbulence and you might have to end up doing an emergency landing in a different city that you never even intended. But finish it. Just get there and put the end. Get the wheels on the ground. Will it be perfect? Absolutely not. But it's a draft, guys. If you need to do some research about something and you don't have the means, leave that for the second or third draft and come back to it later. I wouldn't recommend stopping the whole caravan to learn about which type of mineral was likely mined in the old abandoned mine scene in chapter 23. Just slap on a likely candidate and keep moving. Silver seems safe to me. For me, first drafts are all about momentum. And I wouldn't slow that momentum for something small that can easily be researched and remedied in a later draft. The first draft of a first book is very challenging for new writers. My first book took 6 years from first word to published novel. During that time, I made every mistake in the book. That's another one of those puns. I had to learn a lot of lessons. A lot of writers never finish that first book. They get discouraged and they give up. I think in a lot of ways, a first manuscript is a sandbox. You'll dig a lot of holes and then you'll have to fill them back in. You'll scrap large portions of the book, try different narrations, cut characters. It can get really messy, but you can do it. Trust me, you can. Persist. So remember how I said the first book took me 6 years to finish? Well, the second book took me 3 years, and it was a significantly longer book at that. I learned from the mistakes of the first book, and so will you, if you don't give up. I really want to see you land that plane, guys. And so do your characters, which in this metaphor are the passengers of the plane. We'll talk about similes and metaphors in a later episode, but for now, I think I've given you enough to think about. I'm here to support you. And if you want to support Writing Escapades, drop a like, subscribe, write a comment, write a review, or buy my books. First one. Second one. They're available in ebook, paperback, audiobook at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere online where books are sold. Links in the description. And if you aren't keen on reading, the paperback could also be used as paper to start your fire on a cold winter's night. Nothing would make me happier than knowing that my words are keeping you warm. Did I mention that I've kind of a sarcastic, dry humor? Because I totally do. Okay, that's enough. I'll see you guys on the next episode of Writing Escapades. Also, I just realized that the shirt I'm wearing is the same one I wore for the trailer, but you know, I don't have a lot of shirts or clothes, so you know, you're gonna see stuff. It's gonna be repeated. So sorry, I don't know. Anyways.